Welcome to Mother Daughter Projects. I'm Steph.
I'm Vicki, and today we're making a 2x4 outdoor bench.
11 years ago when I bought my house, I made this very simple cinder block and 4x4 bench, and it's worked pretty okay during that time, but it was time for an upgrade. Now when I was thinking about what kind of bench I wanted now, I had 5 things in mind that I wanted it to accomplish. 1, I wanted it to be a simple design and easy to build. 2, I wanted to potentially hide packages under it or over it. 3, I wanted to be able to easily sit and put my shoes on or put stuff on top of it. 4, I wanted to make sure it didn't collect rain and rain wouldn't just pool on top of it. And 5, I wanted it to be able to be easily moved during a storm or be heavy enough to not have to move.
Well, and this design accomplished all 5 of those criteria.
Now this is not an original design, you'll definitely find a lot of these out there, but we did follow one tutorial fairly closely, and we'll talk about that in the what we learned at the end.
And also at the end we'll talk about how much this costs, so let's get started!
Step 1, buy and gather materials. We bought 7 8-foot 2x4s and 4 6-foot 1x4s. The rest of the tools that we're using can be found on our website at motherdaughterprojects.com. Step 2 is to make the cuts. I always start by cutting off one end so I have a nice straight edge. From one 2x4, I was able to get one top slat and 2 legs. Because I had so many similar repetitive cuts, I set up a stop block so I didn't have to measure each cut. You can't see it, but there's a structure to the right that I'm placing the 2x4 against, which will mark the 60-inch cut for the top slats. For the shorter cuts, I set up a stop block on the fence of the miter saw and made the cuts. Again, with the 1x4, I started by making a fresh cut on the end of each board. I was able to get 3 legs out of each 6-foot board. With all the cuts made, we tested out how the bench would be laid out. And it looks perfect! Next, we went through each top slat and marked what would be the bottom, which would be helpful for sanding and painting. We chose this based on what side had the most imperfections on the bottom. Step 3, sand and pre-paint. Mom sanded all the legs and I sanded the top slats. Mom clamped the orbital sander upside down so she could move the legs across rather than hold the tool. I made sure to sand the rounded edges where you'll sit on the bench so it would be more comfortable. Next, we marked where not to paint the top slats. We used a 2x4 as a guide and put an X so we wouldn't accidentally paint that section as it's going to get wood glued. Mom is using leftover Olympic Elite solid stain to paint the slats. She's painting before assembly because it would be challenging to paint once the slats are together. She'll paint the rest once the bench is assembled. Step 4, assembly. To attach everything together, we're going to be using Titebond 3 Ultimate Wood Glue, which is made for outdoor projects, and 2-inch outdoor wood screws. These screws come with their own star drive bit. These are much easier to use than typical screws, and we're not going to need to drill any pilot holes. I added the bit to my impact driver, which is going to give me more torque to drill the screws in without needing to pre-drill. If you don't have an impact driver, it's worth investing in one as a DIY maker. We're also using a center punch to mark the placement of each screw. To secure the structure to the table, we're using track saw clamps because they have a flat side. We also put a silicone pad underneath so it didn't leave a mark on the painted wood surface. To prep, we put all the materials on the table, and the first step was to glue one end of the 2x4 and line it up with the first slat. Then we glued a 1x4 and placed that on top. I marked where we're going to add the first 2 screws. Then I drove them in place with the impact driver, making sure they were below the surface of the wood. We continued this process for each layer. For each slat, Mom added glue to both ends, then we turned it over and I added 1 screw to each. Then Mom added glue and used a silicone spreader to evenly distribute the glue. We're using a Rockler square to make sure it's nice and lined up. Then I punched where we're going to place the screw, making sure they were in locations different than the ones underneath. Mom slightly sanded over the screw holes and cleaned up any excess glue. Then she spread the glue on top and we added a 1x4 to that. And we just continued the same process on either side until it was done. I added a couple of extra screws to the end pieces, and we added wood fill over the screws. With that done, it's a bench. You can see now why we painted the middle first, as it would have been really hard to do it at this stage. Step 5, paint and rubber feet. Again, Mom is using Olympic Elite Solid Stain, which is a paint that is designed to protect wood against outside elements. We've used it many times and have had great results with it holding up outside. Mom used a combination of paintbrush and roller to get in all the grooves. The reason we went with the solid stain is because A, we had it, and B, it's a coating you don't need to reapply like you would with some semi-transparent stains. With the elements we have here in Florida, we went with the most durable solution. For the bottom of the legs, we decided to add a rubber coating for extra protection against water. Here we're marking 3.5 inches down, and we added upside down puppy pads to protect the rest of the bench. We followed the instructions on the can for applying this rubber coating. A day later we removed the painter's tape and it did stick a little bit, so we used an X-Acto knife to get a clean line. Step 6, prep placement. This is the bench I made 11 years ago that has done well, but it's time to say goodbye. You can see the concrete was pretty dirty and green, so we decided to use our pressure washer with surface cleaner to make quick work for cleaning this section of sidewalk. Step 7, set up and enjoy. And here's the bench all done and in place. I love the simple design and look and functionality it brings to my front door. This checked all 5 of the boxes that I needed in a bench and more.
What we learned.
Now, when you do projects outside, you usually want to use pressure-treated wood because it's been treated with chemicals to help it stand up to elements. Well, we decided not to go with that for a couple reasons. One is pressure-treated wood is a little bit more expensive. It also takes a little while for it to dry out because it's been treated with those chemicals. It's also a little bit more hazardous to work with because of those chemicals, and you need to make sure you protect yourself from those. And then lastly, we knew we were going to be using that solid stain, and we were hoping that would protect it fully from the elements, but only time will tell.
So you're wondering, well, how much did that bench cost? Well, it cost us about $75, and that was for the lumber, the screws, and the glue. So for $75, we got a custom bench for the space that we needed.
Now, we did have 3 fails during this project that we will now talk about. The first one is all of the legs we actually cut a 1/2 inch longer than we needed because I had this idea that we would then, after everything was assembled, we would then cut them all so they would be exactly the right length. We wouldn't have to do any sanding, and it worked okay, but because the wood was so thick, we actually had to make 2 cuts, and it was really hard to kind of line up those cuts, and we had to like turn it over, and it's a big bench, so I wouldn't recommend that. Basically, after you have it all assembled, I would just really do a good sanding on the bottom, and you're probably good to go.
And you probably noticed in the video that I used 2 different methods to put on that glue. The first one, I tried this screw-on roller glue spreader thing, and it works okay, but eventually it just started to leak, and there was glue all down the bottle, which is just a mess. And the other thing I used was that Rockler little spreader with the little blue container and the black spreader. That was perfect. So I would not use that screw-on thing, but use that spreader. It was perfect.
And lastly, when I was pressure washing the concrete, I started with the surface cleaner and then I followed up with the wand, and it worked fairly well, but I got close to the house, and for somehow the wand actually hit the side of the house and it broke the side of the nozzle. And you can see here, Mom actually caught it on camera, and it started spewing out on the side, and I was like, okay, this is not gonna work. So we had to go, I sent Mom to Home Depot while I finished up the rest of the concrete, and she got a new one, and that worked perfect. And as I was researching this design, the best tutorial I found actually was from a friend of ours, and this just happened randomly from research. Her name is Sky, and she has a channel called Home Jelly, and she's a DIYer just like us. And I'll put a link to the tutorial that she has because we followed that one the most closely. We did make some changes here and there, which we'll put those on our website as well. And she followed a tutorial by Anna White, who does a lot of outdoor furniture using common lumber like we did today. So it's always great to share, and it's a circle of DIY.
Thanks for joining us. If you want to see more from us, you can follow us at motherdaughterprojects.com, and please like and subscribe, and you can also subscribe to our once-a-week newsletter. Bye.
Bye.